You may not need this podcast, but I promise you're in the right place. I'm your host, Ben McDougal, with my AI companion and co-host, BenBot. Each week, we're live in the Pour Over Publishing studio to chat with remarkable students, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and community builders. Together, we have fun exploring the frontiers of entrepreneurship and technology in Iowa and beyond. If you're a curious leader thirsty enough to make a ruckus, welcome to a friendly jolt brewed to keep you building. Enjoy! Are you ready to talk about building into the internet? I have Drew Harden in the studio today, and we are going to discuss all sorts of things around web development, but not just the future of SEO and how to work with 35 people who have built thousands of websites. But you were going to talk about, culture versus strategy versus vision. He also has a new book called Retain, so I want to hear about his book writing journey. These are some of the things that we're going to talk about with Drew Harden. Good morning, my friend, and welcome to the studio.
Good morning. Great to be here. Thanks, Ben.
Oh, it's great to have you here. And why don't we start with a short introduction?
Well, okay, let's see how short I can make this.
I was born in.
So I am the president and CEO of Blue Compass, and we are basically a digital marketing organization that spends each and every day getting more qualified users to come to our clients' websites and then getting them to convert on those websites. So doing the actions that our clients want them to do. So we do that through web design and development, digital marketing, like search engine optimization is a big for us. And over the years, I've loved doing that. I've been doing it for 16 years. Blue Compass is 16 years old. And I found over the years, one of the things that I think really makes for an incredibly effective organization is the culture of the company, is the feeling that you get when you're there, is the experience that people have every day. So I've learned that over the years that, in my role as CEO, it's really about the culture. My number one purpose is to create an incredible culture. It's to know our values, to make them known, to live them out myself, and then to enable our team to do the same. And so I do a lot of, these days, speaking on company culture, focusing on that. That's what my book Retain is all about. And I've found that that's one of the things I'm good at and the things I'm really passionate about. And, I think my dream is a world where everyone feels Mondays are just like Fridays, where people enjoy going to work. I think that work is such an incredible place, Ben, where people have the opportunity to connect, to build relationships, to build a family, to personally develop, to better themselves, to have incredible experiences. But I feel like there's so many workplaces out there that don't have that. And so that's one of the things I've become passionate about over the years.
I love that passion. The Song of Significance is Seth Godin's latest book, and I've mentioned it a handful of times on different episodes. And, building a place where people feel that sense of significance, right? Culture beats strategy every time. And so I'm wondering, thinking about your speaking engagements, right? You have that slide deck that you would never take this slide out. This is the slide that gets people's attention or has that mic drop moment on it. What is the message here when you think about, all right, culture is everything?
Well, I think it's the message that, culture is not a ping pong table. I think so many organizations, you go to their website and they have a page that's about us or it's company culture page. And, it's photos of beer on Fridays and ping pong tables. It's photos of them volunteering somewhere. And all that is great, but a ping pong table is not company culture. Company culture is the sum of the values, the leadership, and the interactions that you have every day at your workplace. That's what shapes company culture. It's something you can feel and experience every day. And if you can create a place where people aren't looking over their shoulders like someone's going to take their credit, where people feel comfortable, where people are willing to say, hey, how can I help you? Where people celebrate others' victories, where they're not in constant competition with each other, where departments aren't, opposing one another, then that enables us to, forget all of that stuff and focus on doing a great job, on taking creative risks, on enjoying our day in, day out experiences. And I think that's one of the messages that I try to share. And, there's many things that you do to get there. And that's what I share in my book. I share 5 keys of incredible company culture. And, just the leadership it takes to get there as well. And I think, Ben, one of the things I get asked most is, hey, I'm not a leader. I'm not a CEO. I'm not part of the C-suite. I'm not a VP. But the culture at my workplace isn't great. But I can't do anything about it. What am I supposed to do? And I think that's a really valid concern. I think a lot of people feel like that. And indeed, if you are the CEO, you do have a lot more opportunity to change culture and to improve things and to be a great leader and everything like that. But I also believe, Ben, that your title doesn't make you a leader, your actions do. And you may not be able to change your whole organization, but you can influence your sphere. We can all influence our spheres, and those spheres can influence other spheres. And so I think it's important for us to all be the leader that we wish we had. And I think we all have more influence in our organizations than we think.
Yeah. You're talking about something that's like the cousin to intrapreneurship. Being a champion of change, right? And building a space, building into the sphere, as you mentioned, that can make an impact and that can expand into the organization. Okay, so one thing we talk a lot about here is the future of work, education, hiring, building a team, and the culture, of course, is like a thread that connects all of that. We talk about real skills. Like if someone comes and into the environment and you're like, all right, you don't quite know how to do all of the tactics, but I can tell you have this characteristic or that characteristic. What are some things that you're looking for when you're hiring, knowing that you're trying to weave someone into a culture, and every time a new variable is added into the equation, it changes things. And so how are you ensuring that culture is dynamic?
The greatest thing that you do to influence your company's culture is to add people to it. And
nice.
The person that you add to it obviously makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And so when you hire, for some reason, over the years, we've decided, as a society to synthesize everything about a person down to just a one-page piece of paper called a resume. So we try to take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And you can teach skills, but you can't teach personality. So someone's not going to change their personality when they work for you. And so, Ben, we found that, it's important that someone has the skills to do the job, but if some of the skills are lacking a little bit, that's more than made up for in their values, their personality, and what some people call soft skills. So when you hire, the number one thing to do, in my opinion, is to hire based on your company values. So at Blue Compass, we have 5 values. We are positive. We grow our expertise. We support one another. We give clients our best, and we reject drama and gossip. So the number one thing when we hire is to find people who believe those things and are going to fit into them and help us continue that.
Nice.
And we've gotten better at it over the years. We didn't used to be so good at it. And if they don't have 100% of the skills, we can teach that. They can get there. And ideally, the perfect candidate has both. But again, you can teach skills, but you can't necessarily teach personality. And so I think that's the number one most important thing, Ben.
Nice. I wanted to create a lot of space for that culture-flavored discussion because I know it's something that you're passionate about, but also something you've led through action. So thank you for creating this type of an environment where people can come together and build with a sense of significance. All right, let's get nerdy. Time to talk web development. For those of you who know me long enough, you know that I spent 8 years in web development, and this was back in 2004 to 2012-ish. And so when you think about all that's happened on the internet, I have to be curious. I'm so interested in talking to you about like how do customers come to you? And let's start with like tactics for outsourcing storytelling. Are you bringing someone in-house to build your website, to take your photos, to tell your story? If that's not in the cards, how do you collaborate with a provider in a way that's very organic and long-term?
Well, we've built 1 million websites over the years. And
1 million.
Exactly. Actually, today we launched the 1 millionth.
Congrats, dude!
So
congrats!
Celebrate.
Everything's champagne.
And I think one of the things we've learned over the years, Ben, is that we're very good at what we do, at the design, the development, the marketing, asking the right questions, understanding what does success look like with this website. What would make you a year from now say, wow, I'm so excited. I'm so glad that we went with Blue Compass to build this website. It's so effective for us. Mm-hmm. This is crossing, all the boxes. And so we've gotten really good at that over the years. But I think, if you're looking for a new website for your organization, it's not only finding that partner that is incredibly talented at what they do, but it's also finding a partner that listens. And I think listening is one of the most important things, and that's something we do really well too. When we build a website, we have incredible expertise that I believe we can offer to an organization. But at the same time, they have incredible expertise that we don't have. It's just as important for us to learn about them as it is for them to learn through us in this process. So we really look at it as a partnership. We have to be an extension of their team. And so it sits down, it starts with sitting down and understanding, what are their goals, what's their audience, what's their vision, what does success look like, asking a lot of questions and just listening. I think that's so important for, an agency or a development company to do. Understand that company that you're working with, understand that organization. And we spend a lot of time asking questions, meeting initially, understanding, trying to get the right people in the room or online to hear what we need to hear from everyone. And the worst thing I think an organization can do is meet with you once and say, okay, here's a proposal, let's get going. It usually takes a few more meetings than that, and just a lot of time and asking questions to understand that, is this the right partner? Is this the right relationship? We really want to be an extension of a client's team, and the way you get there isn't just through expertise, isn't just through a great web design and development, but it's through caring and listening.
It's almost like activating the culture that you seek to serve up in your environment, and finding ways of doing that through that digital asset, but also connecting all the dots that they might have throughout social media, some of the other different types of marketing, and further like showcasing their storytelling online. I remember back in the days, like static websites were like $4,000 to $6,000, $10,000. Oh, you wanted to change content on your own site? Ooh, that's going to be a quick $25K. Like SEO. Oh, that's a little bump on every project. So I'm curious, and I'm guessing our listeners would find this compelling. Like, what's an average budget, right? And so I brought BenBot, which is our conversational AI, into the studio. It's my co-host, which is some nerdy good fun. And I asked BenBot, like, what does it cost to have a web development company create a standard business website? And maybe that's the slightly wrong words for the prompt, but I think it got the sense of what we were trying to ask. And it says that a standard site can, of course, depend on the complexity of the project, right? But generally, they can range from around $2,000 to $5,000. However, a more complex website, we think about more like development versus just informational website, can easily push 10,000 and more. So I'm curious what that type of response from BenBot makes you think.
Well, I think that's it depends on the organization. There's so many factors. So we get asked that a lot. How much is this going to cost? And we try not just to throw out a number because it does, depend on a lot of factors. Sure. It depends on, timeline. It depends on functionality. It depends on their goals, their complexity of design. Do they need branding? What level of 3-1 redirects do they want? Do they want copywriting, meta titles, meta descriptions? So there's a million things that goes into it that we have to figure out. And so That budget of a website would be probably for a smaller organization and a smaller website. It's usually more than that these days for sure. And so it just depends on the organization and everything. And it's been interesting over the years, Ben. I mean, when we started out, gosh, the first website we did was probably for, $2,000 or something like that. And now, I mean, we can do websites, way more than that, or, certainly more than that in some instances. So it just depends. I think another thing too, you mentioned search engine optimization, is sometimes organizations are like, oh yeah, I want to rank higher than my competitors in Google. I want to be found, and, throw some of that SEO in there. And I think a lot of times people think search engine.
Oh, just check the box, Drew.
Yeah. Search engine optimization, the way you build a website, the way you code it, the content and everything, that's extremely important. But it's not just something you throw in there once. Search engine optimization isn't trickery and getting Google to display your website or anything like that. It's really all about creating valuable content that will serve your audience, that will provide your audience with value. And if you can do that, then Google, other search engines will recognize that. And if they, search engines watch usually what people do on different pages of your website, and if they see people engaging with your content, spending a lot of time with your content, if it's really providing value to users, maybe people are spending a little more time on that page than your competitor's page, that's when you really start to make a difference. So really good search engine optimization is a marathon, and it's not a sprint, and it's spent with, number of hours every single month, monitoring the words that matter most, your service lines that matter most, monitoring your competitors, optimizing changing content, but also, changing codes, changing images, changing the user experience. The experience the user has on a website is very much search engine optimization as well. So it's a really long ongoing process, and it can take a lot of time and sometimes money, but it's also very, very powerful.
Well, we're not going to just leave it there, my friends. SEO is a hot topic and matters. It's changed since I, was working in the dark arts of SEO when no one knew why they needed a website, but they sure needed one, and so things have changed. And that's what I'd like to continue talking about after the break. Then we'll shift gears. Everyone has a book to write. It's whether or not you have the resilience to go down that path. And sometimes it's a little bit foggy. And so we'll talk to Drew a little bit about how Retain came online and learn from his experience right after this. Are you looking for that next keynote speaker? Maybe it's a workshop or something to add energy into your conference. Perhaps you're an educator looking to engage and activate students. Hey, my name is Ben McDougal, and if you jump over to benmcdougal.com and hit the speaker page, you'll find a variety of different talks that were brewed to resonate with students, entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs, so that together we can continue building what's next. All right, back to the show. Welcome back. Drew Harden and I have just decided the future of the internet while you were away. Just kidding. We're actually talking about how web development works, right? How to work with folks to tell that story effectively, long term, and how to make sure that the remarkability is seen by the audience you seek to serve. And so when it comes to building a website, we talked about, the bones of this thing being properly developed, but how to further extend the reach. And oftentimes SEO or search engine optimization is a good place to start. We were closing down that last part with a little bit about SEO. And when I think about SEO, is content still queen? Is that the biggest? I used to always describe it as a pie chart, right? Content was a big piece of it. Strategic inbound links was the second largest piece, and then you've got all these other things that go into that pie chart. What's in the pie chart for you these days, and SEO in 2024?
Right. Well, content is extremely important, and that's probably the most important ingredient because, again, the entire purpose of Google is to provide valuable content for its users. Google doesn't want people to search, be frustrated, and go elsewhere. And so if you can be the answer to a query, it's incredibly powerful. And this is why traffic that we see coming from search is generally more effective and is more likely to convert on the website than traffic that comes from social, than traffic that comes from other websites, other links, than visitors that even come directly, typing in a website address directly. So if you can be the answer to the query that your audience is asking, it's very powerful.
One of the ways that you can start building solid content is some key phrase research, right? It's not all about length or quantity, and like finding the phrases that people are going to use but are also not overly competitive. How do you help people find a balance when it's time to think about, okay, I'm not going to use it in my sentence anymore. I'm going to use a key phrase that actually means something to my audience. How do you help people build quality content?
Yep. Well, sometimes we do it for them.
Okay.
The client says, hey, you write this, do some interviews with our experts and we'll write it all. We do the keyword research and we create great content. And sometimes, the client has copywriters and the client wants to do that. And that's great too. And sometimes we'll just do keyword research, just help SEO the content that they write. So the first thing I'd say, Ben, is don't be afraid of a lot of content. So many websites that we see out there, it'll have a page and there'll be like 100 words on the page. So if Google sees 2 pages on the internet, one is your page, it has 100 words, and one is a competitor's page, and it has 1,000 words. Which of those pages has more potential to provide value to users? It's a page with 1,000 words.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily. It has to be well written and everything. It should be shorter paragraphs. It should be original content, probably have some images throughout to create interest, to tell the right story. You should have headings throughout, an H1 at the top, H2s, H3s throughout, so that it's scannable both for people and for search bots. But, don't be afraid of more content. And sometimes people think, the internet is a place for people with low attention spans. People just want to get into a page, look real quick, and leave. But, just because your page has quite a lot of content on it doesn't mean you're forcing visitors to read the whole thing.
Right. You can have some good call to actions that guide those short attention spans into the right direction along the way.
Yep. Have good headings throughout so they can see, maybe even embed a good YouTube video so someone can watch or listen to the content in a different way if they prefer to consume content that way. So don't be afraid of a lot of content, but it has to be really high quality. It has to be well written. And especially as we look at AI makes content more important than ever.
But just don't copy and paste, because guess what else someone else is doing,
Duplicate content. Yeah, so it needs to be original, absolutely.
Right.
So I think that's the first ingredient, just having really high quality, well-written content. And you mentioned keywords. And so, using the right keywords is important. Google's gotten a lot better over the years, understanding synonyms and phrases and the intent of searches themselves. But, one of the examples I often give was that we were working with a medical organization, and they were very interested in promoting their bariatric surgery. And the only problem is we did keyword research for their target audience in the geographic location. We found that no one searches for bariatric surgery.
Or knows how to spell it.
Even though that's absolutely the right word to use.
Right.
And we looked, and people use weight loss surgery. And I think that's something that we all probably fall victim to, Ben, is that we use the right words for our industry, but that doesn't mean our target audience does. And so we had to go to them and really encourage them, hey, we're going to use the words weight loss surgery. We're going to use some of the language that perhaps your audience uses. And we did, and it helped the page rank better. It got them more, ultimately, appointments, conversions, and things like that. So using the right keywords is important. And we use 1 million tools. We even have some tools we build ourselves to find out how users search. But, if you're just doing it on your own, even just going to Google, search for maybe one of the keywords you want people to find for one of your services or products, and then scroll to the bottom, and where it has the different pages you can go to that no one ever goes to, but it has, Google with all the O's underneath there's related searches. And those are keywords that people who searched for the keyword you inputted also searched for. The people also ask area can also give you some other ideas. Another really easy tool to use is Google Trends. Anyone can go just to Google Trends, search for that, and it shows you, you can compare keywords, see what people are searching for, select a certain geographic region, see, which searches are more popular. So it's, again, Google's gotten a lot better, and you don't have to match it exactly, but it is wise to understand how your audience searches.
Yeah, and it's a good exercise to think about your own work, the words that you know as jargon within your industry, but like Drew shared, examples of things that maybe someone who's not in the industry might consider using, and the tools that you shared are highly valuable. And so those early key phrase like exercises of dumping everything and then trying to find this balance between something that's used enough that's valuable to be in front of, but not overly competitive, right? You're not going to get number one ranking for the word car, right? But you might be able to add a couple of words, create a phrase that's impactful, and finding that balance will also help you then weave that into the vocabulary of your content and give yourself, even if it's a mental sitemap, so that if you're going to use weight loss surgery as the example, that one of your interior pages might be highlighted by that. And then when you're creating a link with someone else and collaborating in that way, instead of just a linked logo or click here, back in the day, the PDF reader was the number one result for click here. And so instead you can use the term, in our case, weight loss surgery, and guide people not to your homepage, but to that interior page where it's actually highlighting the answers to that query. So just a little SEO stuff from back in the day that sounds like still somewhat relates. Real quick before we get book talking, like I was surprised by the movement of like a single long scrolling, like one page site. It might have navigation that just bumps you down to the different areas of that one page versus the thickness that you described of a website that has enough content to showcase diversity for search engine optimization. I don't know if there's much to say there, but what are your thoughts on like single page sites versus something that has a little bit larger of a sitemap?
Well, it depends on all the audience, the content, things like that. If you have a website and it's more of a brochure site, there's not a lot to say, and everything that you have to say is fairly related, then perhaps one page is good for your website, and you click on the navigation, it jumps to different areas. We usually tell clients to consolidate pages. A lot of time we'll start working on a new website and we'll be like, hey, gosh, there's 15 pages here under this main navigation. We should consolidate that to 3. Because these are all very related topics and there's not a lot of content for each one. So I think it depends on how related the content is. And another thing I'll throw out there, Ben, is I think when it comes to search engine optimization, we need to stop thinking about Google as a place that sends people to your website and start thinking about it more as a place that grabs your content and displays it. So the dirty little secret is Google isn't particularly interested in sending anyone to your website. That's not really what Google wants to do. Google wants to appease its shareholders and become more profitable every quarter. That's what Google wants to do. And so one of the ways it's done that over the years is its rich snippets area, which is the area up at the top or on the right-hand side where it brings information into the page. So it shortens the searcher's journey, which is pretty handy. But it's also grabbing content from websites and displaying it itself. So it can still be good. It can highlight you as an expert. But now, it's AI experiments. And I was in Boston a couple weeks ago. My wife moderated a panel with Google.
My mind is brewing out on the AI side of things, right? It's just answering it for you instead of guiding people to the site where it might have come from.
Yep, exactly, yeah. And so my wife moderated a whole panel with Google about this very topic. And so now, it's in beta, but Google is, and I've opted into it. It's called Search Labs right now, but I've opted into it. And so when I do a search, it will give some AI-generated responses as well. So Google more and more is using your website just as a place to grab information and then to display it. And I hope Google does a better job in the future. It's often not sourcing its information, and a lot of its AI responses are really wrong, I found.
Little hallucination.
And so we'll see how Google does that. But regardless, this is why it's important to set up a really high quality website that's coded well, that makes it really easy for Google to find information on your site. We do something called schema markup, and this is a special code that you can put on your website that basically shortens the journey for Google search bots and makes it easier for them to understand what a page is about and grab the right content. That's something no one really talks about when it comes to SEO, but that's incredibly important that your website has really solid schema markup.
Is that a synonym for sitemap?
No. Sitemap's a different thing.
A little bit more. Okay.
Yep, it's basically code that you insert. You can go to schema.org and there's a lot of information about it, but it's kind of like a universal thing that like Yahoo, Bing, Google have all agreed on. That you can put on web pages. And so, if you're selling products, you need to have schema markup on there that tells Google, hey, this is a product. And then Google might bring it into its product section.
Gotcha.
You need to have name, address, phone number schema on your website. So there's a lot of things you can do.
Well, if you can't tell, this could be a 2-hour episode on all the things web development. But let's shift gears, Drew. What's the schema for your book?
So it's called Retain, and the subtitle is How to Create an Incredible Company Culture That No One Wants to Leave. And, over the years, again, as I realized that my number one purpose as CEO is to create an incredible company culture that helps nourish and sustain and be a big blessing to people. I started talking about it more and more, Ben, at different events. I started to be asked to speak about it at conferences and things like that. And so I was like, I might as well write this down.
Nice. How long did it take for you to write?
It took 1.5 years to write.
And how did you go down the publishing path?
It's published on Amazon. So Amazon has a platform called Kindle Direct Publishing. So it's published in Kindle, but of course also in paperback. And you can grab it on Amazon, obviously. It's also an audiobook, so you can grab it on...
Did you narrate?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. That was interesting. So you can get it,
It's performing art.
It's performing art, exactly. So you can get it on Amazon and Audible and Apple Books and things like that too as well. But writing it, it took a while. I tried to be purposeful about it. And as I wrote, I would learn more and I would go back and read and I'd be like, I need to change this.
No, I would need a whole nother section. But at a certain point, do I need a second book?
Do I need a second book? Yeah. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, if I am wanting to go back and change things because I'm learning more, I suppose that's good. It's the second book I wrote. I wrote another book on content marketing a number of years ago. But I think the most interesting part, Ben, was to record the audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
So the book was done, and I'd never recorded an audiobook before, and it's just sitting by yourself for hours.
It's literally talking to yourself.
Talking to yourself.
Yeah. And then listening to yourself if you go down the editing path.
That's almost the weirdest. Yeah. So, I mean, once it's all recorded, it's like I need to sit and listen to it. And it's not a super long book. I mean, the if you listen to it, it's 3-4 hours long. But just sitting and listening to yourself for 3 or 4 hours is just a bizarre thing to do. So I've become very comfortable with my voice, I guess.
Well, thank you for narrating.
Had to be.
Yeah.
Well, I always think it's better when the author narrates it.
Totally.
There's probably a little more passion put into it. So it's been a really incredible journey and everything to write it, but it's been a lot of fun.
What's the biggest sensation you've felt since Retain was published?
I think,
which was earlier 2023, right?
Yep, early. It was, I believe, March or April 2023.
Yep.
So it hasn't been out too long as of the point of this recording. But it's just when someone mentions like, oh, hey, I was talking to so-and-so and they read your book. Or if just someone random, like I don't even know, was like, oh, yeah, I read your book. Where I don't expect it, that's a real blessing. I'm really thankful when I hear that.
Nice. When you think about that publishing experience, did you explore other paths, or was this always you had done it before, it sounds like? So
I had done it before, so it was pretty comfortable, and it's a really good process, and it's what publishers go through. But so I basically cut the publishing organization out and did it myself.
How'd you do the editing?
Well, I hired someone to edit it.
Good.
Someone who I know is an incredible editor, and she did an absolutely tremendous job.
It's funny because even if you're a great, perfect writer, get an editor.
Oh, absolutely.
And for the writing process for You Don't Need This Book, we had a developmental editor that looked kind of at the readability of it. Fun fact, that was where we added the sidebars to give it some personality. And oddly enough, the introduction, which is usually best written at the very end, right? To prepare people for what you have crafted. And so when you think about word count, do you have any thoughts on where people might want to be thinking about when they're pushing towards something that's not just a brochure?
So I'm going to jump back to our discussion about SEO and content.
Ooh, look at this connection. Here we go.
And video. And, we get asked a lot like, hey, how long should my online video be? How long should this page be? How long should this content be? And especially when it comes to video, I mean, there's been a lot of opinions over the years. People usually would say, oh, make it shorter for the web. But, in recent years, YouTube seems to favor longer videos as long as they're high quality. Facebook has outright said, hey, if your video is 3 minutes or longer and, people are actually watching it, then we're going to rank it higher. It has more opportunity to come up on people's feeds. So, at the end of everything, Ben, what we've realized is let the duration match the content. Don't try to make it shorter. Don't try to make it longer. And I think it's the same for the book. If you write a book that's incredibly short, that's probably fine if you want to, as long as you go through the right publishing process, or maybe you just put it in a PDF and put it online. If you have a lot to say, that's fine too. But don't ramble. Just make sure it's quality content.
Right. You're not just writing fluff to add words. But I do think that there's value in thinking beyond how many pages it looks like in your Microsoft Word document.
Yes.
Because really what matters is the page, the word count paired with the trim size, which is like the size of the book. And so with Pour Over Publishing, I've learned a lot about all of the different knobs that are turned in this process. One tip that you might consider is adding another distributor. When you have it available through Amazon, KDP is magic. It's a wonderful platform that makes it possible for anyone to go out and craft a nice looking book. The trick is it can be self-published as long as it doesn't look or feel like that. And if you're going to go down a pro-grade path, you can choose time or money, and that is a platform that allows you to create something that's really sharp. Now, what if you're Barnes & Noble? What if you're the library? What if you're anyone besides Amazon? You'd probably rather not buy from your competitor. So adding a secondary distributor where your exact same book, it actually might look and feel a little different. So comparing that will allow you to give people that ISBN number and order it from that distributor. It also might have a different quality that you may like, and it allows, for mine, for instance, that's where I buy bulk in order to use at different speaking and engagements. So we can talk more about that after the show. But
good advice.
When it comes to book publishing, and if you have questions about that, the writing process, I think both Drew and I are here to invite you to pursue that path. We all have a story to tell, but if it's not keeping you up at night, there may be a resiliency that you need to continue exploring. And so let us know. Touch base with Drew. There'll be contacts in the show notes. As we close down, know that all the things that we talked about will be highlighted in the description. And so, man, this is one of those that I knew was going to be fun, but I also knew that we weren't going to have enough time to hit up all the fun topics that you and I could discuss. Is there anything else? I mean, I know we're a little over time, my friends, so thanks for sticking around. But Drew, as we close down, should we create space for anything else? And then we'll let you close things out.
Well, I'll tell you what. So, we're talking about writing a book and everything, Ben. And, one of the things that I've got passionate about over the years is just simply learning, professional development, continuing to get better. I feel like in my 20s, when I started Blue Compass, I didn't do a great job of that. And I learned more from mistakes than I did from mentors. So I try to do a better job now of reading and growing. And I'm doing a book club right now, Ben, with both of my boys. So I have two boys, Ethan and Chase, who are currently 15 and 12.
Nice.
And so one of them is pretty into it, and one of them's not as interested, but that's okay. But we're reading a book called The 7 Habits of a Successful Teenager.
Ooh, I've heard the one with the leaders, but the successful teenager.
So
all
this
right.
is kind of more of a book for
Nice,
teenagers, but it's the
nice.
same principles.
You're learning all the things that you should have done back in the day.
Should have read this many years ago. But, as I was going through, we're talking about it, and my son Ethan asked me, he said, he's like, Dad, what would you tell yourself when you were 15?
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and it's like there's so many things. It's hard to nail that down, Ben. But I think one of the biggest things I would tell myself is you become what you think. You become what you think. And there's a verse which is Proverbs 23:7, and it's, as a man thinks, so he is. And that's probably one of my biggest takeaways through all this, writing and speaking and running Blue Compass and everything. You really become what you think about. And as I've gotten older, I've realized how important it is to think positively, how important it is to not focus on like the negativity you hear on the news all the time, or, fears. It's so easy to get caught up in fear, especially when you own a business or you're doing all this stuff. I used to have a lot more stress, and I've gotten better over the years, but I try to do my best to fill my heads with, what are the possibilities? What could go right, not what could go wrong. So that's what I told him, and I think that's one of the things I'd end with.
I know that's the mic drop moment, but we need to create a little more space here. And I love that you're reading with your children. That's a sweet experience that you'll always cherish. There's one by Neil deGrasse Tyson, Astrophysics for Young Adults. That one might be a fun one. Icarus Deception, though, by Seth Godin is one of my favorite recommendations for students. It releases that sense that I need permission to make a ruckus on the timeline of now, right? When I look back at myself in those stages, I wish I would have began earlier. The times have changed. The awareness, the nourishment of the education system, when you think about the entrepreneurial lifestyle or the innovative spirit, has evolved. And so they're being introduced to these things so much earlier. And a lot of our episodes you'll see are about education and supporting folks even in the earliest of days. And so I really do also appreciate what you think about is what you become. Thank you for sharing that. As we close down, thanks again for being here, Drew. I appreciate your time. How can people stay connected to you real quick? But then let's leave folks as you ride off into the distance.
Well, yeah, if you want to get in touch or follow me or anything like that, so I'm on pretty much every social media, Drew Harden, Harden, and drewharden.com. And if you check out Blue Compass, that's the company at where I am working and where I pour out my heart and soul every day, and absolutely love the team. So lots of stuff there too.
All right. I gotta ask, what's that last moment? What do we leave our listeners with?
Be positive, because you become what you think about.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of You Don't Need This Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this weekly dose of innovative energy. Thanks to all who make this show possible. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'd love to learn more about what you're building. Hit me up over at benmcdougal.com, and until next time, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Keep building.